Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Sunday, end of the weekend. Well, for some, right? Some of us have that 3-day weekend upon us. It is 12:03 p.m. California time here, September 3rd, 2023. Latest activity looks like a 1.5 into the area of Southern California. Now, this is hitting roughly about the same time as some movement up here in Northern California. Well, actually, that's going to be that 1.5 there. Came up pretty nicely on that seismograph station. Guess that's not really Northern California, but a lot of people like to argue about that. 1.5 right on the San Andreas Fault. Latest earthquake showing up there on the map. Seen a little slight activity this morning as well around the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. 1.1 within the last hour. Northern California, extreme Northern California, not a whole lot going on up there for now. We did have some movement off on the Blanco fracture zone with the 3.0 about 3 o'clock this morning. Again, off of the plate boundary, off of this fracture zone. Somewhat of a small earthquake there. And Mount St. Helens still seeing some movement overnight. I don't know if they put all the earthquakes up here or not, but they put a handful, a 0.6, 0.7, and a 0.1. I was just checking out the seismograph station there at the Mount St. Helens area. Let's go check it out real quick and see what we got. It looks like I closed the window accidentally, but that's okay. Go check out Mount St. Helens here and see what we have for seismic activity. I'm not going to check out the gas stations there. We kind of checked those out last night. Most of them look okay. There was one that had a carbon dioxide elevated level measurement, but aside from that, things look somewhat normal there on the gas emissions. But earthquake activity here, and this is today's date, 9/3. This is GMT time. GMT. Notice that there's still some earthquake activity popping up here. Now the USGS showing the last one around 8:49 local time there at Mount St. Helens, and it's all been a little part of a swarm going on there at Mount St. Helens, and it's nothing quite to worry about yet. But if this thing kicks up and we start seeing some inflation or GPS uplift, and we could be looking at maybe this thing starting to fire up. But for the most part, these earthquakes and this swarm, let me go back here, I think it's been within the last 7 days. It may have been even further than that. Let's see, let's go 30 days. There we go. So we got roughly about 70 earthquakes here in the last 30 days of all magnitudes around the Mount St. Helens area, and that's a little bit, I'd say that's a little bit above the typical background levels for just general earthquake activity. Most of this movement has been occurring on average around 3 kilometers below the surface, below this area right here. So uncertain on if this is just maybe subsidence or if this is maybe seasonal, maybe seasonal subsidence, because a lot of times the rainwater, and this is just a little theory here, a lot of times the rainwater, snow melt and whatnot will soak into the ground like a sponge and provide a little what looks like maybe inflation during the summertime, spring and summertime months, and then once that kind of goes away, then we get that deflation event with some earthquake activity. But that's just, I don't know. I mean, this is down there about 3 kilometers or so, so it's definitely something I'm kind of keeping an eye on. May inquire from I may have to email one of these guys up there and see what they think. A lot of people, you message these USGS professionals and they just say, well, it's nothing to worry about. Everything looks good. Either way, some earthquake activity, at a volcano, specifically right underneath the dome here, is questionable. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on that, folks, and seeing how this plays out. Again, was it carbon dioxide or no? That was sulfur dioxide. Here we go. A little bit of elevated measurements here. Now these are all subject to preliminary or to review. This is all preliminary type data, I believe, coming from the instruments themselves. But it looks like over the past month, there's definitely been somewhat of a period here of elevated sulfur dioxide across that area, and more so, within the last few days since we've seen this swarm of activity. But most of this information you can find there on the usgs.gov website, volcanoes/Mount St. Helens, and there's a number of instruments that you can check or de-check, whichever you prefer. And I don't know if they have any cameras up there or not. You think they would, wouldn't they? One camera at Sugar Bowl, and well, doesn't look like it's operable. View a time-lapse video of 2004, 2008. I'm not really interested in 2004, 2008. I mean, I wouldn't mind traveling back in time there. A few years younger. Here is this is called the Volcano Cam. Now, this was put out, look at that date. These guys are not really quick on updating their data. This is way back earlier this year. So, all right. We'll move on and take a look at the rest of the earthquake activity, but I'll just know that we are watching this and keeping an eye on it. I do have a seismograph station up there that's monitoring, that's surprisingly operable. It's been holding up pretty steady. I better not jinx it. It's this Mount St. Helens station right here, and sometimes we'll see the spikes of the earthquake showing up there on the live stream. Mount Rainier, looks like maybe one earthquake there earlier this morning as well, low 0.6. I'm really surprised they're showing these smaller earthquakes throughout the weekend, but that's good. Yellowstone National Park here, got 2.2 and a 1.5 earlier this morning. Let's see what we got for the seismograph viewer. What do we got here? Looks like a little bit of activity stirring up. Well, this looks like around the eastern side of the park, right? Where's the USG? Yeah, eastern side over here. 2.2 and a 1.5. That's just outside of the Yellowstone caldera. Yellowstone caldera is going to be here in this black outline. You got Lake Yellowstone here in the blue. But that 2.2, it looks like maybe there was a little bit more activity. I'm guessing they're putting these three earthquakes up there on the map, even though there's only two. We got a 2.2 and a 1.5 within minutes of each other right there. Looks like there was another one, a little bit smaller one, and then another one here a couple hours later, more recent. They're at Yellowstone National Park. But it looks as though that may have been even further east or away from this area, or deeper potentially. This could have been maybe a deeper quake, but no mention of it there on the USGS map. So we'll continue to watch that. Yellowstone super volcano. Out east, or Central Plains area, Southern Plains, all look fairly stable. Handful of smaller quakes over here around the Pennsylvania area, 1.7 near Red Lion. Pretty small earthquake, but somewhat of a rare quake up here. We do get occasional quakes up around the eastern portion of the country, but not all that often. All right, South America, anything going on down here? 4.4 and a 4.4. Mostly deeper movement here into the Peru-Chile Trench, adding some further strain upstream across that subduction zone, which one day will ultimately produce a mega quake again. Let's see what we've got in the Earthquake 3D globe. Looks like a 5.0 over around Afghanistan. Is that correct? Right here. Just outside of that region, west of the Caspian Sea, it looks like. 74 kilometers deep. I think we've seen a handful of quakes out here in the last 30 days around the sea area. 5.1. Turkmenistan area, that was earlier, well, about, last month, mid-month in August. So a little slight elevated activity here across this region of the world. As far as plate tectonics go, definitely can see some earthquake activity out there. There's the Afghanistan movement, 4.1 from yesterday. And let's see, not a whole lot going on through the Western Pacific today. It looks genuinely quiet. We are seeing some elevated movement roughly from, looks like Fiji westward here, although we're lacking some movement once again across the Solomon Islands area. It's going to be this region right here, seismic gap. Could see that fill in today. Looking at that teeter-totter effect, bouncing back and forth here. Deeper movement, shallower quakes across the plate boundary, leaving this wide open for some movement here soon, I'm sure. New Zealand, I don't think we see too much going on down there, but let's double check, see what we got. New Zealand, 3.8 2 days ago. As far as the most recent activity, it looks like a 3.0 Kermadec Trench area. And a handful of smaller microquakes. This is just basically looking similar to what we would see along the California area. You know, it's very typical to see these little microquakes up and down the plate boundary. And that's obviously very typical across this plate boundary as well. Somewhat similar, but in a way different, in their own different ways. Separate ways, I should say. Got a subduction zone that sits off the east coast here, but this is a plate boundary. Normally, the typical transform type plate boundary here. And it doesn't look like there's too much activity showing up there across the GeoNet area today, or at least the New Zealand area on the GeoNet servers. That's going to be the earthquake in the Kermadec Trench last night. That was a 4.2. But aside from that, clear sailing out there around Deep Cove, New Zealand area. All right, what else we got? The Big Island, anything stirring up out here? This is another volcano we're kind of watching here. Just been having a little earthquake swarm, but very consistent below the surface as far as the depth goes of these magnitudes. Roughly between 1 to 2 kilometers here below the surface with no upward migration, so to speak. And of course, that's mentioned here in the HVO. Let's check out their daily update here. This is the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory daily update on Kilauea Volcano, which currently sits at an advisory in yellow. The volcano is currently not erupting. The elevated unrest is due to the earthquake activity. But here they mentioned most of these earthquakes have occurred at depths of 1 to 2 miles, 2 to 3 kilometers below the surface, lacking upward migration. A little bit of inflation and deflation going on. Obviously, that's magma moving below the surface. Maybe there's not enough, maybe it's not charged enough, so to speak. So there's a couple different scenarios that we could see take place here with this. Might just see things mellow out, die off, if there's not enough, pressure behind it to push that magma up to the surface. I would watch here for some deeper movement quakes below that 2 to 3 kilometer range, which would be a good indicator of maybe a renewed influx here of magma from below in the plumbing system. That could recharge and give this, this magma that's sitting down there enough push towards the surface area for the, the eruption to take place. And that's just off of the south of the crater area. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. Unless something's blocked down here, which I think if that was the case, there is some gases leaking up out there on their webcam, some volcanic gases. So I don't think that there's a complete blockage around here that would increase swelling out here with a potential, explosive eruption on the southern area of Kilauea Volcano. But you never know. Definitely watch that and see how that plays out. All right, Alaska, anything major going on up here? Doesn't look like it. Getting some cooler temperatures, though. I've seen that on the weather forecast here recently. Winter's starting to creep on in, and that's a good thing. I like the wintertime. Bring on the temperatures, cold temperatures. All right, Puerto Rico Trench, a little slight elevated swarm of activity here outside of the British Virgin Islands area. That's specifically this little swarm right here. Did have a 4.3 and a couple other threes in there as well, about 26 too shallow. Well, there's a shallow earthquake here, 4 kilometers. There we go. It's not Monday. Monday's hopefully will be happening on Tuesday, a 3-day weekend. So, yeah, a little bit of activity stirring up out here. We'll continue to watch that as well. For now, a handful of smaller quakes there. Space weather activity. Now that's another thing. That sunspot over here on the western limb is just popping off M flares like crazy. But it's out of sight, out of mind. Earlier this morning we did have a pretty nice M flare kick off, let me show you guys the movie that shows the last few M flares here on this far side sunspot. Let's click this into view. Watch this area up here. Is it this area? Maybe this area. There's one, and then we have a series of a couple other M flares in there as well. Boom, boom. Look at that. Pretty active, very active, so to speak. But that sunspot was facing us for the longest time and relatively stable. Look at this plasma over here dancing like crazy. So that's I can't even remember the name of that sunspot. It's long gone, but it's still blasting off some powerful flares. Definitely not Earth directed whatsoever. No effects will be due here on Earth unless we get some activity up there in the ionosphere from the charged particles that may be produced with I'm go back forward here, from any flaring. But again, that's way out of sight right now, and we are left with goodness, this we're left with this. This is it. Not a whole lot of new development, not a whole lot of complexity here at all with these sunspots. Got a couple of little weak ones coming around the eastern limb of the sun, but goodness, that's not looking all that promising here. They did put out the solar cycle progression data for the month of August. Looks like, obviously, August was somewhat of a quieter month compared to the last few months overall. But the data here still shows us well above the predicted sunspot number progression, and also the SFI, the energy. So taking a dip. That's that dip right here in August. As you can see, Kevin pointed out here on this chart. And hopefully this will pick back up. Either way, the trend overall, similar to what you see on the stock market or something, the trend overall is still elevated. And above the forecasted level, so hopefully we'll get things stirring back up here. But either way, yeah, that was an M6.0 that was produced earlier today from that far side sunspot. Okay, AR3413 is the culprit, but it's very active. But again, it's way off there, and of course it'll probably throw off an X flare or a massive full halo CME that is not anywhere near Earth. That's just how it is. That's how these sunspots have behaving recently. It's pretty eerie. All right. There is a little bit of the activity that we've seen here over the past night or so, past 36 hours. We've seen some elevated KP index out here, sparking up some auroras at the higher latitudes there. Just kind of out of the blue, there was almost two distinct events. I know they were forecasting one here, a G1 class storm, but something came up out of the blue and sparked up a G1 storm by itself. It was well ahead of the the arrival of the glancing blow, the expected glancing blow for this date, for this time period. But this one came in a little early. I don't think it was associated with this. I'm guessing it was just a maybe a weak CME. Even though I really haven't seen any CMEs prior to that one. So it's just a little weird how this space weather has been popping up out of the blue, unforecasted. But this one here, this little one right here, that almost, some models are showing that it reached up to the KP index of 7, but I don't know. At least on this chart, almost KP index of 6. This was forecasted. This event really wasn't. And here's the expected event. So, and that was directed away from the Earth. We just barely got a glancing blow from that one. All right, though. 95% chance for a C flare, M flare at 25, X flare around 5% chance. And that's mainly due, well, to those sunspots that are no longer in sight. So I'm probably guessing these will change here very soon. Calming back down on the aurora forecast for now. Space Weather Prediction Center. Well, if you want a bunch of rain out in the west, it looks like we got it out here around Nevada and portions of Utah. Going to fill up the Great Salt Lake City over there. Great Salt Lake over there around the Salt Lake City area. A lot of rain heading their way with a slight risk of severe weather. Not really tornado potential, but it looks like some wind and hail events. They are definitely expecting a bunch of rain out there today. They have been getting a little bit of rain, so see what we got here for the rain accumulation amounts here over the next, well, looks like this is going to scoot off here over the next couple days, but they're currently getting some rain out there right now, I would say. A lot of thunderstorms brewing. Again, out there in that slight risk category. Could see some straight line winds and some rain. That'd be almost a fun little drive to go check that out, but this is scooting well off to the east, so a little too late to the party to go out there and check out those storms. Either way, Battle Mountain area getting, goodness, quite a bit of rainfall up there. The desert needs a rain too, right? That's for sure. And of course, Yellowstone. Right now, it looks like there's some storms firing up around it. We'll probably expect this to fill in throughout the day. And of course, that will light up these charts slightly. It will bring in this type of feature. It looks like some of this station right here is getting some of that rain, wind, maybe some thunder out there from these storms showing up as that seismic signature right there, and down here as well. Hasn't really hit this area, but I guarantee you tonight it will pop up. I always like to point that out because I have a lot of people asking me, what's this measurement? How come you guys are skipping this? This looks like a earthquake activity. Well, it's not. It's not magma. It's not earthquake activity. It's outside interference by these storms that pop up in the afternoon and fade away. That's why we only see them during a certain time period for a couple hours, and then they disappear. All right, folks, I am going to jump off here. Have yourself a good day. Got a lot of work I got to do. Even though I got like a 3-day weekend, I still have a lot of schoolwork I have to work on. A bunch of essays. I'm trying to work towards that degree. You know, if it's worth it, well, I'd say it is. School's always important, right? Definitely have to have a little bit of knowledge, and it comes in handy here with this YouTube channel. I'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on this evening. Have a good one and enjoy your weekend.